was the last time you went over your guidelines for workplace health and safety at the place you work? Or maybe even the OSHA guidelines for where you work? Maybe once, you skimmed through them, maybe never. Now, I have to admit, I would have to empathize with you if you said never or maybe once, because I also am the same. I would brush it off and just think these are legal implications to protect the employers from getting sued. However, it's more than that, because nothing is worse than having to be injured, and through all of your problems, your health is your number one problem. Because you can have a million problems, but when it comes to your health, that's the only problem you have. Today I'll be discussing on why it's so important for workplace health and safety to be mandated in our society today. Now, before I continue, I would have to ask you, what do these pictures have in common? Here you see some steel-toe boots, personal protective equipment, and a guideline on it at least, hard hats, and high-vis uniforms. These are all common methods of practicing workplace health and safety. Without these kinds of things, we would have very flawed and misconstrued ways of protecting ourselves at work, and we'd face more fatalities at work. How does workplace health and safety ensure the well-being of workers? Well, the OSHA Act of 1970 kind of was the guideline for how workplace health and safety should be done, because I couldn't tell you before then how it was. But I'm guessing it was a lot more dangerous to work in various environments. Today, due to the OSHA Act of 1970, we have had advancements in how we treat workers and how workers gain resources to the things they need. Without workplace health and safety, our society would have more injuries due to not adhering towards the OSHA Act of 1970, a less exaggeration of mental health, and young workers would have a difficult time understanding anything can happen in the workplace, fatal or not. So without the OSHA Act of 1970, we wouldn't be able to understand fully what health means. Now that I briefly went over the OSHA Act of 1970 in my previous slide, I'd like to introduce this slide by sharing a picture of President Richard Nixon signing the OSHA Act of 1970 and asking you a question how you believe workplace health and safety came to be. Because in my opinion, before the OSHA Act of 1970, we had a lot of undocumented fatalities and injuries that could have been prevented with proper and safe working regulations. The OSHA Act of 1970 was enacted to assure safe and healthful working conditions for working individuals according to the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. OSHA is continuously making guidelines every single year that we have to follow and do training on in order to be well informed on how to work properly. Although I'm limited in what I'm sharing to you, OSHA standards are to prescribe methods employers must use to protect their employees from hazards, according, again, to the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. So my last slide, I hope I was able to inform you a little bit on the OSHA Act of 1970 and how it's broadened horizons and opened doors for workers in bettering their health and safety within the workplace. But how does mental health play into workplace health and safety? While I briefly mentioned the legality aspects, as time moves forward, so do ideals and mindset of those in the workplace. There has never been a time where mental health has been put towards an emphasis on workplace health and safety. According to the American Psychological Association, a happy, healthy workforce is good for employees and the bottom line. A healthy workforce calls for a happier and healthier society in which communities will thrive, as stated by the author Novotny. A healthy workforce is the foundation for thriving organizations and healthier communities. Mental health is the sole reason on how we play out how the days will be. The most important aspect, in my own opinion, for any person who works a job is their mental health. Despite my obligation to inform you guys on workplace health and safety, taking care of your mind is how you take care of everything else. Now that I've been able to go over OSHA Act of 1970 and describe the role that mental health plays in workplace health and safety, I'd like to inform you on how we can empower the next generation to remain healthy and safe in the workplace. Young adults are transitioning into the workplace, and as they do, they're leaving behind a sense of familiarity. In that familiarity they had with their families, they're growing independent and sprouting their own wings. But this can also lead them to not being informed on how workplace health and safety can be. To prevent that from happening, the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, as well as the American Industrial Hygiene Association, created Safety Matters as a way for young workers to get an idea of how their efforts will help create safe and healthy work environments. Did you know that In 2022, there were about 19.4 million workers under the age of 25. The National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health suggests that's about 12% of the population. While it is up to the employer to ensure safe and healthy working conditions for the young workers must also recognize that although work is valuable, any worker can be injured, become sick, or even be killed on the job. Now, many may brush off health and safety at the workplace as, oh, you care too much, but practicing safety will always be cool. Being healthy will always be cool. These are some of the key points that I've chosen to inform you guys. Although I've limited workplace health and safety to the OSHA Act of 1970, mental health and measures taken for young worker safety by the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, it's important that every single person understands the implication that these rules were set on, and brushing it off can cause injuries and may leave grief behind in the end. While it may be difficult to understand the standards of workplace health and safety your next job has listed out, it's in the best interest of all that work to understand workplace health and safety has been embedded in society's best interests. Thank you for your time.